The Sunday morning sun filtered through the kitchen blinds, casting stripes of light and shadow across the floor. Adam had barely slept the night before, his mind tangled with work stress. He had risen early, craving the solitude of a quiet morning and the comfort of freshly brewed coffee. As he poured his coffee in the living room, he heard faint voices drifting from the kitchen. His wife, Amelia, and her mother, Lillian, were deep in conversation. Normally, Adam didn't pay much attention to their chats. Lillian was over so often that their morning conversations had become part of the background. But today, something caught his ear, a hushed, conspiratorial tone that prickled the back of his neck. The sound of their laughter, low and tinged with something that didn't feel right, made him pause just outside the doorway. "So, you really think he'll ever figure it out?" Lillian's voice was almost a whisper, but it reached Adam clearly. There was a hint of amusement in her words. "You've done a great job covering it up, sweetheart," Lillian continued. "I'm so proud of you." Adam froze, his mug suspended halfway to his lips. His heart gave a heavy, startled thump. He couldn't see them from where he stood, but he could picture Lillian's smug smile, the same one that always made him feel like she knew something he didn't. Amelia laughed softly in response, and Adam's stomach twisted at the sound. Once, he had loved her laugh, but now it grated against him, strange and hollow. "Don't worry, Mom," she said. "He's never been the suspicious type. He trusts me too much." Adam's grip on his mug tightened. Each word they spoke sank into him like stones, weighing down his chest. What were they hiding? He wanted to burst into the room, demand answers, but he forced himself to stay calm, to keep listening. "Just remember," Lillian said, "no slips, Amelia." "He can't know, not now." There was a long silence, and Adam could almost hear Amelia nodding. His pulse quickened, thoughts racing through his mind. For the first time in their marriage, he felt a seed of doubt take root, twisting his gut with suspicion and anger. Finally, after a deep breath, he decided he couldn't stand to wait any longer. He squared his shoulders, forced a relaxed smile onto his face, and stepped into the kitchen. "Morning, you two," he said, trying to keep his voice casual. He forced a smile and glanced between them, searching their faces for any sign of guilt or discomfort. "Everything all right?" Amelia's head snapped up, her eyes widening for the briefest second before she smoothed her expression. "Oh, of course," she replied quickly, but her eyes flicked away from his, landing on the countertop just a bit too long. "We were just talking about, Mom's stuff." Lillian was the picture of calm, giving him a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yes, just a little mother-daughter talk. Nothing interesting, Adam." Adam felt the tension in his jaw as he struggled to hold on to his calm. He took a sip of coffee, the bitter taste grounding him, keeping him steady. He tried to act as if he believed them, but doubt gnawed at him. "Must have been a pretty funny conversation," he said lightly, raising an eyebrow. "I could hear you laughing all the way from the living room." Amelia forced a chuckle, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Mom was just telling me a funny story about one of her friends from her book club. You wouldn't get it." She shrugged, her tone casual, but Adam caught the way her fingers fiddled nervously with the edge of the table. Lillian shot Amelia a quick look, a glance, so brief Adam almost missed it. "Oh, yes, it was just a silly little thing," she chimed in, giving Adam another smile. "You know how women get when we're just gossiping." Adam nodded slowly, trying to piece together their story. He could tell they were lying, but he couldn't pinpoint what it was about. Instead, he decided to prod a little further, just to see how they'd react. "Well, I'm glad you're both having a good morning," he said, his tone easy. "I thought we'd spend some time together today. Amelia, maybe take the kids to the park, or head out for brunch." For a second, Amelia's face flickered with something, annoyance, hesitation. He couldn't quite tell, but she recovered quickly, smiling at him. "That sounds nice, Adam. We could all use a day out, I think." Lillian cleared her throat, folding her hands on the table. "Well, I won't intrude on your family plans. I should be heading out anyway." She stood up, giving Amelia's shoulder a quick squeeze. "I'll see you later, sweetheart." Amelia's smile wavered as she watched her mother leave, and Adam didn't miss the tension that settled over her the moment Lillian was gone. As he walked past her to refill his coffee, Adam decided to test the waters one last time. "So, what was the story your mom told you?" The one that was so funny. He saw the faintest flash of panic cross Amelia's face before she forced a casual expression. Oh, it was just something about one of her friends. Her friend's husband doesn't know how to cook, and he set their kitchen on fire last week. It was ridiculous. She laughed, the sound strained and forced. Adam nodded, his face calm, though he felt anger simmering just beneath the surface. He knew Amelia well enough to know when she was lying. And if she was lying about something as simple as a conversation, then what else could she be hiding? Must have been some story, he said with a forced smile. All right, I'll go get the kids ready. Let's make it a nice day. As he walked away, he felt Amelia's eyes on him, wary and tense. But he didn't turn around, didn't let her see the suspicion that was now firmly planted in his mind. Later that morning, as they gathered the kids and headed out for their family day, Adam's mind kept drifting back to that conversation. Each word, each laugh, replayed over and over in his head, and the unease twisted deeper. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, terribly, horribly wrong, and he was determined to find out what. The following days turned every moment into a quiet agony for Adam. His mind was a revolving door of memories and suspicions, each new thought giving him reason to question everything. He began noticing details he'd never thought twice about before. The way Amelia seemed to grow tense around him, the odd glances she and Lillian exchanged when they thought he wasn't looking. They would often stop talking if he walked into a room, their voices trailing off like fading whispers. One evening, Adam found himself watching his children more closely than usual. His oldest son, Leo, was running around the backyard with a soccer ball. Leo's dark hair, olive skin, and deep-set eyes seemed different somehow in the light of his newfound doubts. Next to him, his younger daughter, Ava, laughed as she tried to keep up. Adam felt his heart twist as he looked at her, her brown hair, her features so similar to Leo's and so unlike his own. Adam forced himself to shake off the thought. These were his children. He loved them with everything he had. But in the back of his mind, the questions kept bubbling up, unwanted and relentless. It wasn't just their looks. It was something deeper, something he couldn't ignore. That night, as he lay in bed next to Amelia, he couldn't sleep. He glanced over at her, watching her breathe softly, her face peaceful in the dim glow of the bedside lamp. He tried to reach for the comfort he once found just by being near her, but instead, he felt only distance. He got up quietly, slipped into his study, and sat down, staring at the dark wood of his desk. His mind was a mess of half-formed accusations and second guesses. He told himself he was being ridiculous, that it was all a misunderstanding, some trick of his imagination. "This is insane," he muttered under his breath, rubbing his temples. "You're overthinking it. You're just tired, stressed." But even as he tried to convince himself, the doubts wouldn't leave. Images from that morning replayed in his mind, especially Lillian's words. "You've done a great job covering it up." The phrase looped over and over in his head. Adam let out a frustrated breath and leaned back in his chair. His hand hovered over his phone for a moment before he finally gave in and picked it up. He typed DNA testing kit into the search bar, his fingers moving almost of their own accord. The website loaded quickly, and before he could second-guess himself, he was entering his address, filling out payment details, and clicking Order Now. As soon as the confirmation flashed on the screen, Adam felt a mixture of dread and relief. Part of him wanted to cancel the order immediately. What was he even thinking? These were his children, his family. But another part of him, the part that remembered Lillian's laugh, Amelia's sidelong glances, needed to know, needed proof. The days dragged by after he placed the order, each one stretching longer than the last. Every time he looked at his children, a pang of guilt gnawed at him, but it was matched by a growing, insistent need for answers. His interactions with Amelia grew colder. She noticed, of course, asking him several times if something was wrong, her voice laced with concern. "Just tired," he would reply, avoiding her eyes. One evening, as they sat at the dinner table, Amelia glanced up from her plate and gave him a searching look. "You've been quiet lately. Is everything okay at work?" Adam hesitated, caught off guard by her question. "Yeah, work's fine," he replied, forcing a smile. "Just, thinking." Amelia tilted her head, a slight frown appearing. Thinking about what? Nothing specific, he said, picking at his food. Just life, I guess. Amelia gave a small, uncertain smile, but Adam could tell she wasn't convinced. If something's bothering you, you can talk to me, she said gently. He felt a pang of guilt, but the words stuck in his throat. What could he say? That he'd been feeling like a stranger in his own family? That he'd ordered DNA tests behind her back because of one suspicious conversation? Instead, he just nodded. I know, Amelia. Thanks. After dinner, as the children were watching a movie, Amelia pulled him aside in the hallway. Adam, she said quietly, her gaze direct, are you sure everything's all right? Adam tried to hold her gaze, but the questions lurking in his mind made it hard to look at her. Yes, Amelia. I'm fine. Just give me a little time. She looked unconvinced, but didn't press further. All right. I'm here, okay? Adam nodded, watching her as she walked back to the living room. He wanted to feel reassured by her words, but they left him feeling hollow. Every time he saw her, every conversation only seemed to amplify the doubts. A few days later, the DNA test kit arrived. He found it in the mail after everyone had gone to bed, the small, inconspicuous package a stark reminder of his worst fears. He took it into his study, staring at it for a long time before opening it. His hands trembled slightly as he read the instructions. He knew he'd have to be careful, and he couldn't shake the fear that someone might find out. But he couldn't wait any longer. That night, he quietly collected samples from each of his children while they slept, careful not to disturb them. As he moved from room to room, he felt the weight of his actions pressing down on him. With each sample, he felt a mix of shame and desperation, but he pressed forward. The next morning, Adam drove to the post office alone, mailing off the samples with a sense of finality. As he watched the package disappear behind the counter, he felt a strange emptiness settle over him. All he could do now was wait. Over the next few days, his thoughts drifted constantly to the test results. He caught himself staring at his phone, waiting for a notification that would change his life one way or another. His interactions with Amelia grew even tenser. He began to wonder if she noticed how he pulled away, or if she could sense the churning anger and fear he kept buried just beneath the surface. One night, as he lay in bed next to her, Amelia reached over and placed a hand on his arm. Adam, she whispered, her voice soft in the darkness. Please tell me what's going on. I feel like you're a million miles away. He swallowed hard, fighting the urge to lash out, to demand answers. Amelia, I told you I'm just dealing with some things. I'll be fine. She let out a sigh, her hand slipping away. Okay, but I miss you. I miss us. Adam stared at the ceiling, his mind a storm of thoughts. He wanted to believe her, to reach for the comfort he once found in her presence. But the memory of Lillian's words and that uneasy laugh lingered. As the days crawled by, the weight of the test results loomed over him, transforming his every interaction with Amelia and the children into an agonizing waiting game. And though he tried to brace himself, he knew that once the results arrived, there would be no going back. The envelope arrived on a Thursday morning. Adam had barely slept, and as he stood holding the thin white packet, his hand shook. The return address seemed to mock him, the formal lettering turning his insides cold. He swallowed hard, feeling his pulse beat through every part of his body, as though every nerve, every part of him was bracing for impact. He took a deep breath and walked into his study, closing the door behind him. The silence pressed down on him, thick and stifling. Carefully, he tore open the envelope, pulling out the folded sheets inside. The paper felt heavy in his hands, as though it carried the weight of everything he feared. Adam scanned the first page, his eyes jumping from line to line until he saw it, an unmistakable detail that stopped him cold: Spanish heritage. His mind reeled, and the room seemed to close in around him. It was right there in black and white. He wasn't Spanish, but his stepbrother, Charles, was. The name felt like a knife twisting in his gut. Charles, his own stepbrother. The man he had trusted, the one he'd always considered family. His hand tightened around the paper, creasing it as his mind raced. Memories flooded his vision, moments at family gatherings, casual conversations, Charles's easy laugh, the way he had always been there, always just around. And Amelia, his wife, his partner, the woman he'd loved, she had been there with him every time. He remembered the family barbecues, the birthdays, the times Charles had offered to help around the house, the lingering glances he'd ignored, the laughter that now sounded hollow. 17 years, he whispered, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. 17 years of lies, of betrayal, right under his nose. His heart ached, a heavy, suffocating pain that left him gasping. He sank into his chair, letting the papers fall from his hand onto the desk. A soft knock at the door jolted him from his thoughts. "Adam," Amelia's voice came from the other side. "Are you in there?" For a moment, he couldn't answer. He sat there, staring at the papers, at the undeniable evidence of her betrayal. Then, taking a steadying breath, he called out, "Yes." "Come in." Amelia opened the door, stepping in with a cautious smile. "I was wondering where you were. I thought you were working from home today." He forced himself to look at her, to study her face. The same face he'd looked at every day, the face that had comforted him, loved him, shared a life with him. And yet, it felt like he was seeing a stranger. I got something in the mail," he said slowly, his voice strained. "Oh." She walked closer, peering at the papers on his desk. "What is it?" He reached out, picking up the results and holding them out to her. "Why don't you tell me, Amelia?" She took the papers, her brow furrowing as she read. Her face changed, first confusion, then shock, then something else, something darker. She looked up at him, her mouth opening, then closing as if she couldn't find the words. "Adam, she stammered, her face pale. "I don't want excuses," Adam interrupted, his voice harder than he'd ever heard it before. "I want the truth." Amelia's shoulders slumped, and for a moment, she looked vulnerable, exposed in a way he'd never seen before. "Adam, please, it's not what you think." "Not what I think," he echoed, a bitter laugh escaping him. "Then explain it to me. Explain how my children, my own children, show traits of a heritage I don't have." "But Charles does." His voice cracked on the last words, the pain slicing through him. She looked down, her eyes glistening with tears. "Adam, I never meant for it to happen." "Never meant for it to happen?" he repeated, his anger boiling over. 17 years, Amelia. 17 years, and you're telling me this was a mistake? You kept me in the dark, made me believe these children were mine. "They are yours," she whispered, looking up, her eyes pleading. "You're the only father they've ever known." "But biologically," he pressed, his voice cold. "Biologically, they're his, aren't they?" She didn't answer, but the silence spoke louder than any words. Adam clenched his fists, feeling the betrayal wash over him like a tidal wave. He'd dedicated his life to his family, built a future for them, for her. And all along, she had been sharing a part of herself with someone else, someone he had trusted as his own blood. "How long, Amelia?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. "How long have you and Charles been involved?" She looked away, her hands trembling as she clutched the papers. Since before we got married." The words hit him like a physical blow. He felt the ground shift beneath him, as though he were losing his footing. "So, it was all a lie, wasn't it? Our entire marriage?" Tears streamed down her face, and she shook her head. "No, Adam, it wasn't like that. I love you. I've always loved you. Charles, it was complicated." "Complicated?" he spat, feeling the anger burn through his sorrow. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me? To this family?" She reached out to him, desperation in her eyes. "Please, Adam, we can work through this. I'll make it right. I'll do anything." He took a step back, out of her reach. "There's nothing you can do to fix this, Amelia. You and your mother, both of you kept this from me. You let me live a lie." "It wasn't like that," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought you'd never find out." Adam stared at her, feeling a hollow emptiness consume him. "So, you were happy to let me go on loving children that weren't even mine, as long as you didn't get caught?" She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Her silence was answer enough. Adam turned away, gripping the edge of his desk, as he tried to steady himself. He felt sick, every part of him aching with a pain he didn't know how to bear. "I don't even know who you are," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "Adam, please," she whispered, taking a tentative step toward him. "I know I've hurt you, but we can find a way through this. For the children." He turned to face her, his eyes hard. "The children? You mean his children?" Amelia flinched, her face crumpling, but he didn't feel any satisfaction. Only a cold, unforgiving emptiness. "Get out, Amelia," he said quietly, his voice as steady as he could make it. "I need you to leave. I can't even look at you right now." Her face fell, but she nodded, her shoulders slumping in defeat. She turned and walked toward the door, stopping once to look back at him. "I'm so sorry, Adam." He stood by the door, staring at her. "How long, Amelia?" His voice was quiet but sharp, each word laced with hurt. "How long have you been lying to me?" Amelia's lips trembled, and she looked down, avoiding his gaze. "More than 17 years, she finally murmured, her voice so low it was almost inaudible. I didn't mean for it to go on this long. But you let it, didn't you?" Adam cut her off, his tone hardening. "You lied to me every day. You let me believe they were my children. You let me raise them thinking I was their father. All this time, you watched me love them. You watched me make sacrifices, and you kept lying." Tears slipped down Amelia's cheeks, but Adam didn't feel moved. "Adam, please, what?" he snapped. "Please what? Please forgive you? Please pretend this never happened? Just tell me how long you thought you could keep me in the dark." She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could respond, Lillian appeared in the doorway, her face a mixture of guilt and defiance. Adam's eyes darkened as he turned toward her. "And you," he said coldly. "You knew. You've known this whole time, and you encouraged it." Lillian lifted her chin, trying to hold onto a sliver of authority. "Adam, I only wanted what was best for my daughter. You were always so focused on work, always so distant. I thought, don't you dare try to blame this on me," Adam interrupted, his voice trembling with fury. "I worked to support this family, to give Amelia and the kids everything. And this is what you thought was best for her? To lie, to cheat, to bring Charles into our home and let him be a part of our lives?" Lillian's face hardened, her guilt transforming into anger. "You think you're blameless in all of this, Adam? Do you know how many nights Amelia spent alone? How lonely she was? Maybe if you'd paid more attention to her, she wouldn't have needed to." Adam slammed his fist on the dresser, silencing her. "Needed to what? To betray me? To humiliate me? Don't you dare try to twist this onto me. I gave her everything I had, and she still turned to him, my own stepbrother. 17 years of lies, of raising children I thought were mine." Amelia looked up at him, her eyes red. "Adam, I'm sorry. I know I can't change what I've done, but the children, they love you. You're the only father they know." Adam shook his head, his jaw clenched. "No, Amelia. You don't get to use them as a shield. You knew this day would come eventually, didn't you? You knew there was always a chance I'd find out." I was going to tell you," Amelia stammered, reaching for him. "Eventually, I thought. When—" Adam stepped back, his voice laced with bitterness. "When they were grown, when the damage was already done. Or were you hoping I'd just never find out? That I'd go my whole life being the fool you made me into?" Her face crumpled, and she buried her head in her hands, her shoulders shaking. "I loved you, Adam. I still do. But Charles, he was there when I needed someone. It just happened." He let out a harsh laugh, shaking his head. "It just happened? For 17 years? Don't insult me, Amelia. You had a choice. You chose him, and you chose to lie to me over and over." Lillian shifted in the doorway, trying to intervene. "Adam, maybe if you and Amelia talk this through, you could—" "Stay out of this, Lillian," Adam said sharply. "You've done enough damage. You knew she was lying to me. You encouraged her to keep this from me. You're just as guilty." Lillian faltered, her bravado crumbling. I was only trying to protect her." "Protect her?" Adam's voice was almost a growl. "And what about me? Did you ever consider what this would do to me? To this family?" Amelia reached out to him again, desperation in her eyes. "Adam, please. I know I've hurt you, but we can get past this. I'll make it right, I swear. He looked down at her hand on his arm and pulled away, a look of disgust crossing his face. You think you can make this right? You stole 17 years from me, Amelia. You let me believe I was building a life with you, raising a family. And it was all built on lies. The weight of his words hung in the air, suffocating. Amelia sobbed quietly, her hands covering her face as Lillian stood silently, finally subdued. Adam looked at both of them, his face hard and unyielding. You both destroyed this family. Not me, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you for that, he said, his voice low and final. Amelia looked up, her eyes filled with despair. Adam, don't say that. Don't throw everything away. I'll do anything to fix this, please. For the kids. They need you. He shook his head. They need the truth. They deserve that much at least. But as for us, I don't see how there's anything left to save. Lillian, her face ashen, tried one last time. Adam, please. You've been a good father. Don't let anger tear this family apart. He gave her a cold, hard look. This family was torn apart the day you encouraged her to betray me. The day you decided to lie to my face and let me live in ignorance. Without another word, he turned, walking out, leaving Amelia sobbing on the bed and Lillian standing in the doorway, stunned. He walked, feeling a sense of finality settle over him. This was the end of everything he thought he knew, the end of the life he had built. And as he reached the stairs, he realized that as painful as it was, walking away was the only choice he had left. The days that followed Adam's discovery were filled with a quiet, calculated silence. He moved through the house as a ghost, his words sparse, his demeanor unreadable. Amelia watched him, feeling a growing dread she couldn't shake. Every time she tried to talk to him, he deflected with short responses or left the room, his expression cold and detached. The walls around them grew thick with tension, yet Adam's silence remained unbroken. Behind closed doors, Adam was busy. He began reaching out to attorneys, drafting a plan for a divorce that would leave Amelia with nothing. He went through their financial records meticulously, ensuring every asset and every bank account detail was accounted for. The betrayal had ignited something in him, a desire to leave Amelia and Charles with nothing, to ensure they would feel the consequences of their actions. Late at night, when the rest of the house was asleep, Adam would sit in his study, poring over documents, drafting emails to his legal team, and arranging meetings. In the mornings, he pretended nothing had changed, holding onto his silence. But inside, he felt a grim satisfaction as his plans took shape. The evidence was easy to gather. He found old messages on Amelia's phone, saved pictures, and even receipts for hotel stays. It was all there, laid out as if she had left him a trail to follow. He documented everything, knowing that each piece of proof was another nail in the coffin of their marriage. One day, he called his brother Peter to confront him. Peter's face grew pale when he realized Adam knew. I didn't know what to say, Peter admitted quietly. Mom, she thought it was best not to interfere. Said it would only cause trouble. Adam's voice was cold. Trouble? She let me live a lie, Peter. You all did. And for what? So Amelia and Charles could get away with this. Peter looked away, ashamed. Adam, I'm sorry. I know it doesn't mean much, but I really am. Adam nodded, his face unreadable. It doesn't mean anything, Peter. Not now. One morning, after weeks of planning, he quietly left divorce papers on the kitchen table for Amelia. She found them while making breakfast, her eyes widening as she picked up the documents. She ran her hand over the pages, a mix of disbelief and fear filling her face as she read through them. She looked up, her voice trembling. Adam, what is this? You're really doing this? He nodded, his expression steely. I am. I want a divorce, Amelia. She gripped the papers tightly, her hands shaking. But what about the kids? What about everything we've built together? Adam let out a humorless laugh. Everything we've built together? Do you mean the 17 years I spent living a lie? Or the children that aren't even mine? He shook his head. This ends now, Amelia. I'm done. Her voice grew frantic. Adam, please. You don't have to do this. We can work through this. Think about the kids. They need you. You're the only father they've known. Adam's gaze turned ice cold. I did think about them. I've thought about them every day since I found out. But they're not mine, Emilia. You took that from me. You and Charles. His voice hardened. You're on your own now. You and Charles can figure out what's best for the kids. A few days later, he stopped by his mother's house to confront her as well. His mother sat down across from him, wringing her hands nervously. Adam, please try to understand. We didn't want to hurt you. Emilia made her choices, and we thought it was best if you didn't know. Best for who, Mom? Adam asked, his tone sharp. Certainly not me. You let me live in ignorance, raising children that weren't mine, supporting Emilia's lies. And you knew. She looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. I did. I thought she'd stop. I thought you two could have a good life together. Adam's face was a mixture of hurt and anger. You thought you knew what was best for me? You let this go on, knowing the truth. She looked up, tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, Adam. I don't want your apologies, he said flatly. You let me live a lie, and that's something I can't forgive. After that, Adam cut off financial support to Emilia and her mother. He stopped paying for anything, knowing the lavish lifestyle Emilia had become used to would crumble without his support. Emilia noticed immediately, and her calls grew more desperate. One evening, she waited for him when he returned home, her face drawn and anxious. Adam, the bank just called. They said you stopped the payments. How am I supposed to take care of the kids? He looked at her, his face impassive. You wanted to do things your way, Emilia. Now you get to. Without me? Her voice grew louder, pleading. Please, Adam, think about the kids. They're going to suffer because of this. They'll suffer because of your lies. He shot back, his voice hard. Not because of me. She looked at him, tears streaming down her face. Adam, I'm begging you. We need you. I can't do this on my own. He tilted his head, regarding her coldly. You're not on your own, are you? You have Charles. I'm sure he'll step up to help with the kids. After all, he's their father, isn't he? Emilia's face crumpled, her voice breaking. It's not that simple. You've been the only father they've ever known. Please don't take everything away. Adam stepped back, a look of finality in his eyes. You took everything from me, Emilia. All I'm doing is making sure you finally feel the consequences of that. Just then, Lillian stepped into the room, having overheard the conversation. Adam, you can't just walk away from them like this. We all make mistakes. Please don't ruin this family. Adam turned to her, a bitter smile on his face. This family was ruined the day you and Emilia decided to lie to me. I'm just making sure you all live with that decision. Lillian opened her mouth to protest, but he held up a hand. I'm done listening to excuses. You wanted me out of the way. Well, congratulations. You got your wish. He turned to walk out, ignoring their cries, leaving the house without looking back. As he closed the door behind him, he felt a strange sense of freedom, as though he was finally breaking free of the web of lies that had entangled him for so long. For the first time in weeks, Adam took a deep breath, the anger and betrayal slowly lifting from his heart. He had done what he needed to do, leaving the past behind him. And as he drove away, he felt a grim satisfaction. It was their turn to face the consequences, to feel the weight of the choices they had made. He was free, and they were finally left to fend for themselves. Life without Adam's support was a harsh reality for Emilia and Charles. The financial strain hit immediately. Emilia, once so accustomed to her comfortable lifestyle, now scrambled to make ends meet. She went through their bank statements, bills piling up in a messy heap on the kitchen counter, her hands trembling as she calculated what little they had left. Every expense was a reminder of the life she had lost. Her credit cards, once limitless, were maxed out. The house, her last link to her old life, felt like a prison as its mortgage loomed over her, threatening to take away the one piece of stability she had left. One evening, Emilia sat across from Charles, her eyes hollow. We can't keep up with these payments, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Adam's completely cut us off. Charles clenched his jaw, looking away. I'll get a job, he muttered, but his words sounded empty. Neither of them had any work experience to fall back on, having relied on Adam's support for years. The reality of it settled between them like a wall. Their friends, once quick to invite them to gatherings and dinners, had distanced themselves. Word of the affair had spread through their social circle, and there was no escaping the whispers and judgmental stares. Emilia had reached out to some of her old friends, but every call ended in an awkward brush-off or silence. No one wanted to be associated with her scandal. One afternoon, Emilia ran into an old friend, Linda, at the grocery store. Emilia forced a smile. "Linda, it's been ages. How are you?" Linda gave her a tight smile, her eyes darting away. "Oh, busy. I've got to go pick up my kids. Nice seeing you." Without another word, Linda turned on her heel and left, leaving Emilia standing alone in the aisle, her cheeks burning with humiliation. When she returned home that evening, she found Lillian sitting on the worn-out couch, staring blankly at the wall. Lillian's once proud face was lined with stress, her eyes dull. The betrayal had eroded her social standing too, and without Adam's support, her influence was gone. She no longer commanded respect or attention, and the whispers followed her everywhere she went. "Mom," Emilia said softly, setting down her bag, "I think we might have to sell the house." Lillian looked up, her face twisting with desperation. "Sell the house? But where would we go? This is all we have left. Emilia, what choice do we have?" Emilia snapped, her voice cracking. "We can't afford this place anymore, and no one will hire us. Adam's left us with nothing." Lillian's face crumbled, and she looked down at her hands. "I never thought it would come to this," she whispered. "I never thought Adam would leave us like this." Emilia clenched her fists, bitterness welling up inside her. She had written letters to Adam, dozens of them, pleading for forgiveness, for any form of assistance. Each letter had gone unanswered. She had begged him to meet, to at least consider giving them another chance, but he'd remained silent, cutting her off completely. The coldness she had once dismissed as a front was now something she felt with each ignored plea. Weeks passed, and the situation only worsened. The bank finally sent a foreclosure notice, giving them a deadline to leave the house. Panic consumed Emilia as she stared at the notice, her mind racing for a solution. She found herself writing another letter to Adam, hoping against hope he would take pity on her. She poured her heart into it, reminding him of the memories they had shared, of the family they had once built. She sent it, only to receive no reply once again. "Maybe we should go to him," Lillian suggested one evening, clutching the foreclosure notice. "In person. If he sees us, if he hears us out." Emilia was desperate enough to try. She spent hours planning what she would say, imagining Adam's face softening, picturing him forgiving her if he could just see how much she was suffering. She convinced herself that, deep down, he would remember the years they had shared and give her one last chance. The next morning, she and Lillian drove to Adam's new home. The house was modest but well kept, nestled in a quiet neighborhood far from the life they once shared. Emilia's heart pounded as she walked up the driveway, her hands clammy. She knocked on the door, forcing herself to take deep breaths. After a moment, the door opened, and there stood Adam, looking at her with a mixture of surprise and irritation. "Adam," Emilia began, her voice trembling, I just wanted to talk." To explain, he held up a hand, his face cold. "I've heard enough explanations, Emilia. There's nothing left to say." Emilia's voice cracked. "Please, Adam, we're struggling. The kids, they miss you." Adam's expression didn't change. "The kids are Charles's, Emilia. And as for you, I'm done helping you. You made your choices. Now you're living with the consequences." Lillian stepped forward, her voice pleading. "Adam, please. You don't understand what this has done to us. We're losing everything." Adam looked at her with a hard stare. "You mean what you've done to yourselves? You lied to me, betrayed me, and expected me to keep supporting you. That's over now." Emilia's eyes filled with tears, her voice desperate. "Adam, I know I hurt you, but we had something once, didn't we? Can't we try to fix this?" He shook his head, a look of finality in his eyes. "We can't fix this, Emilia. You destroyed what we had. I've moved on, and it's time you do the same." She opened her mouth to protest, but he closed the door, leaving her and Lillian standing alone on the doorstep. The finality of it washed over her, a crushing weight that left her numb. As they drove back to the house, Amelia sat in silence, staring out the window, her mind a blur of regret and anger. She had gambled everything, and now she was left with nothing. Charles, too, had withdrawn, growing increasingly resentful as the pressure mounted. Their relationship, built on deception, began to fracture under the strain of poverty and isolation. Months passed, and Amelia found herself living a life she barely recognized. She moved into a small, cramped apartment with Lillian, her days filled with menial jobs that paid barely enough to cover rent. Each day was a reminder of the life she had lost, the life she had thrown away. Her once perfect world had crumbled, and no amount of pleading or regret could bring it back. She wrote one final letter to Adam, pouring out every ounce of sorrow and regret, hoping he might take pity on her. But the letter was returned, unopened, a silent reminder that she was truly on her own. She finally understood the cost of her choices. She had taken Adam's love and twisted it, and now all she had left were memories of a life she could never reclaim. Adam stepped out onto the balcony of his new apartment, taking a deep breath of the cool morning air. The city stretched out before him, alive and bustling, filled with possibilities. Moving here had been a leap into the unknown, but it was exactly what he needed to distance himself from the chaos of his past. He felt lighter, free from the weight that had held him back for so long. The first few weeks had been challenging. Adam kept mostly to himself, focusing on his work and setting up his new space. He poured his energy into his job, working late nights and using each small victory as a building block toward his new life. The silence in his apartment was a stark contrast to the life he'd left behind, but it was peaceful, a quiet that brought him a kind of clarity he hadn't felt in years. One Friday evening, as Adam walked home from work, he stopped by a local cafe. The place was warm and inviting, filled with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods. He ordered a coffee, then noticed a woman seated by the window, reading a book. There was a calmness about her, something genuine that drew him in. He couldn't help but glance her way a few times, noticing the gentle way she flipped through the pages. Just as he was about to leave, the woman looked up and caught his gaze. She gave him a small smile, one that felt genuine and warm. "Good book?" he asked, nodding toward the novel in her hands. "It's a favorite," she replied, holding up the cover. "Sometimes it's nice to escape into a story." Adam chuckled. "I get that. Sometimes real life can get overwhelming." She nodded, her smile fading just a bit, as if she understood all too well. "I'm Melody," she said, extending her hand. "Adam," he replied, shaking her hand. There was something comforting in her presence, a quiet strength he found himself drawn to. They ended up talking for hours, sharing bits and pieces of their lives. Melody was open and honest about her own past. She, too, had been through her own struggles and heartbreaks. They didn't dive too deep into the details, but there was an unspoken understanding between them. As they shared stories, Adam felt a spark, something he hadn't felt in years. Over the next few months, Adam and Melody's connection deepened. They would meet at the cafe regularly, sharing stories, laughter, and sometimes just a comfortable silence. It was easy with her, natural. He didn't feel the need to hide parts of himself, and she seemed to embrace his honesty with a kindness that soothed his lingering scars. One night, after a quiet dinner at her place, they sat on her couch, a comfortable silence settling between them. Melody looked over at him, her expression thoughtful. "Adam, I know we haven't talked much about the past, but I want you to know, you could tell me anything." He took a deep breath, surprised by how much he wanted to open up to her. He told her everything, the betrayal, the pain, the way he'd had to rebuild from the ground up. Melody listened without interrupting, her gaze soft but steady, her hand reaching out to hold his when he needed it most. When he finished, she looked at him with a gentle smile. "You're stronger than you realize, Adam. It takes courage to rebuild yourself after something like that. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever fully let go of it," he admitted. "But with you it feels different, like there's finally a chance to move forward." Melody leaned closer, her voice soft. The past doesn't define us, Adam. It's part of who we are, but it doesn't have to control where we're going. And I'm here no matter how long it takes. Their relationship grew slowly, each step bringing a deeper sense of trust. Adam felt himself becoming someone he hadn't been in a long time. Open, hopeful, willing to love without fear. He and Melody built a bond based on honesty and understanding, a foundation he knew could withstand life's storms. One evening, as they walked through the city park, Melody turned to him, her eyes bright with curiosity. "So, what do you see for the future, Adam?" He paused, looking out at the city lights. "For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can actually see a future, one where I'm happy, where I'm not looking over my shoulder, waiting for something to go wrong." "And do you see me in that future?" she asked, her tone light, but her gaze serious. He smiled, taking her hand. "Absolutely. You've been my light in all this, Melody. I can't imagine it without you." They continued walking, a comfortable silence between them, the future feeling bright and full of possibilities. As months turned to years, Adam found himself evolving into a version of himself he'd almost forgotten existed. He became more involved in his community, picking up new hobbies, and even volunteering at a local shelter, something he'd always wanted to do. With Melody by his side, he felt complete, finally at peace. One sunny afternoon, as they sat on a bench overlooking the river, Melody looked over at him, her smile soft. "You know, you've changed so much since I first met you. I've loved every moment of watching you grow." Adam looked at her, his heart full. "It's because of you, Melody. You helped me see that there was a life beyond the pain." They sat together, watching the river flow, content in the knowledge that they had both found a new beginning, one built on trust, respect, and a love they both cherished deeply. For the first time in years, Adam felt truly happy, finally free from the shadows of his past. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when Amelia and Charles finally mustered the courage to confront Adam. They'd spent years watching their lives crumble bit by bit. Charles's once confident swagger had withered under the weight of debt and strained relationships, while Amelia struggled to make ends meet, losing her once comfortable lifestyle. Word had gotten around about Adam's new life, and curiosity soon turned into desperation. So, they tracked him down, hoping for a glimmer of mercy. Adam was sitting on a park bench, absorbed in a book, when he heard the hesitant sound of footsteps stopping nearby. He looked up, and there they were. Amelia, visibly aged, her face drawn and tired, and Charles, looking uncomfortable and out of place. The sight of them stirred something in Adam, but it wasn't anger or even pain. He felt detached, as if he were looking at strangers rather than people who had once been so intricately tied to his life. "Adam," Amelia's voice wavered as she spoke. "It's been a while." Adam closed his book slowly, studying them with a calm expression. "Yes, it has," he replied simply, his tone measured. Amelia looked around, clearly uncomfortable under his steady gaze. "You look different." "Good, Adam inclined his head slightly. "Life's been good to me." There was an awkward silence, and finally, Charles cleared his throat. "Look, Adam, we didn't come here to drag up the past." Adam raised an eyebrow. "Oh, then what is this?" Amelia took a shaky breath, her eyes pleading. "We're struggling, Adam. More than you know. Things have been hard, and I know I don't deserve it, but we need help." "Help?" Adam's voice was cold. Interesting choice of words. "Help with what exactly, Amelia?" "Help picking up the pieces of the mess you created?" Amelia winced but pressed on. "I don't expect you to forgive us. I know what we did was wrong. But the kids, Adam, they don't deserve to suffer." Adam's gaze hardened. "The kids?" He let out a bitter laugh. "You mean the children you deceived me into thinking were mine? Those kids?" "No, Amelia. I don't owe you anything. Not you, not Charles, not your children." Charles, looking defensive, stepped forward. "You're better off now, Adam. You got your fresh start. We've had nothing but hardship since you left. Do you know how hard it's been?" Adam turned his gaze on Charles, his voice calm but sharp. "Hard? You know what was hard, Charles? Discovering that my wife had been lying to me for 17 years. finding out that you, my own stepbrother, were part of it. I rebuilt my life from scratch without you or anyone else. I owe you nothing." Amelia's face twisted with desperation. "Please, Adam, I'm not asking for me. I'm asking for them. They need stability. They need support. They still see you as family." Adam's expression didn't soften. "Family?" He shook his head. "You threw that word away a long time ago. Family is built on trust, on honesty, on respect. You and Charles shattered all of that. And now you want me to come back and pick up the pieces?" Tears filled Amelia's eyes as she reached out, clutching his arm. "Adam, I made a mistake. I know that now. I pay for it every single day since you left. Please just give us one more chance. I'll do anything." Adam removed her hand from his arm, his face showing only a hint of pity. "Amelia, I gave you 17 years. I gave you my love, my trust, my support. You chose to betray that. I've moved on. I found happiness with someone who values honesty. You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it." Amelia's shoulders shook as she wept openly. Charles looked away, unable to meet Adam's gaze, his usual bravado stripped away. "Adam," Amelia managed through her tears, "I know I can't undo the past. I know you don't trust me. But I'm begging you. You got your life back together. Couldn't you at least help us with?" Adam held up his hand, silencing her. "You still don't get it, do you, Amelia? This isn't about money or support. It's about choices. Every choice has consequences. You chose deception. You chose betrayal. Now you're facing those consequences, and you want me to fix it? I won't do it." She slumped, her voice barely a whisper. "We have nothing, Adam. We're barely scraping by." Adam looked at her, his eyes unwavering. "Maybe that's the price of your choices. Maybe that's what you need to understand, that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences are painful." Charles, finally speaking up, his voice edged with resentment, said, "You could at least be the bigger person here, Adam. Show some compassion." Adam gave a bitter smile. "Compassion? I spent years giving compassion to people who betrayed me. I'm done being the bigger person. I'm done sacrificing myself for people who didn't care enough to do the same for me." Amelia, seeing the finality in his eyes, broke down completely. "I know I don't deserve it, Adam. But please, please, just a little help. For everything we once had." Adam took a deep breath, steadying himself. "For everything we once had? Amelia, that's what I'm doing. By letting you go, I'm honoring what we once had, by not letting it weigh me down anymore. I've found peace without you, and I intend to keep it that way." With that, Adam turned and walked away, leaving them standing there, broken and helpless. Amelia sank to her knees, sobbing into her hands, while Charles simply stared after Adam, his expression empty. Adam didn't look back. The years of pain, betrayal, and heartbreak felt distant now, like faded memories he could finally let go of. He had a new life, a new love, and a future free from the shadows of the past. And he wasn't about to sacrifice that for anything. As he walked away, he felt lighter, stronger. The past was finally behind him, and he was free. The years passed, and Adam's life moved forward. The city he had moved to became his home, a place where he was no longer weighed down by the shadows of his past. He woke up every day with a sense of peace he had once thought impossible. His mornings were quiet, filled with simple routines, coffee brewing, a few quiet moments reading the paper, and then the warmth of Melody's smile as she joined him. They had built something real together. Adam had never been one to trust easily after everything that had happened, but Melody was different. She gave him something he hadn't known he was missing: trust, honesty, and most importantly, peace. Over time, they got married, a small ceremony with just close friends. Adam had no desire for a big celebration. The real joy was in the private moments, building a life based on respect and mutual understanding. As Adam and Melody grew closer, the weight of his past, once a constant presence, began to fade. He still remembered the betrayal, the lies, the anger. But it didn't hurt anymore. It was just a part of his story now, a chapter that had ended, leaving room for a new one. His life with Melody was everything he had longed for and more. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest and full of the things that truly mattered. Meanwhile, Amelia and Charles were left to face the wreckage of their choices. The life they had built on lies and deceit crumbled around them, piece by piece. Without Adam's financial support, they had to find a way to make ends meet. The illusion of a glamorous life slowly disintegrated. Friends who had once flocked to them, seduced by their charm and social standing, drifted away. The scandal had destroyed their reputation. Amelia had tried to rebuild in her own way, but she couldn't outrun the consequences of what she had done. She worked long hours picking up odd jobs, but it was never enough. The burden of the truth crushed her, and every day felt like a reminder of the betrayal that had cost her everything. She had no one to blame but herself. Charles, too, felt the weight of their actions. He had once blamed Adam, thought he had been the one to destroy everything. But now, alone in his own empty apartment, he understood. His arrogance had driven Adam away, and the very person he had used for years to support his lifestyle had been the one to finally walk away. Charles had thought he could outsmart everyone, but he couldn't escape the reality of their choices. It was late one evening when Amelia tried once more to reach Adam. She'd never truly believed he would forgive her, but she still clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, he might help them. She called him, the phone ringing several times before it went to voicemail. She tried to leave a message, but her voice cracked halfway through. Adam, please. I know I don't deserve it, but we need help. I don't know what else to do. Please, just think about it. She hung up, feeling a strange mix of defeat and desperation. She hadn't expected a response. Adam's silence had been the loudest answer she could ever get. He had moved on, and in many ways, so had she, even if she hadn't wanted to admit it. Meanwhile, Adam's life with Melody continued to blossom. They had discussed children in passing, but Adam wasn't in a rush. For the first time, he felt like he was living a life free from the past. His scars were still there, but they no longer defined him. They were reminders of how far he had come. He had survived the worst, and now he was thriving. One evening, as they sat on their porch, watching the sunset, Melody turned to Adam. "Do you ever think about the past?" she asked, her voice soft, tentative. Adam looked out at the horizon for a moment before answering. "I do sometimes, but it doesn't control me anymore. It's just part of my story. What matters now is here. With you?" Melody smiled, her hand resting on his. "I'm glad you found your way here," she said, her eyes full of warmth. "You deserve this. You deserve happiness." Adam squeezed her hand gently. "I never thought I'd get it, but I did, and it's with you." Their future together felt solid, built on a foundation of trust and understanding. There were no more secrets, no more lies. Just the simple joy of knowing that they had each other. Back in the town where it all began, Amelia and Charles continued to struggle. Amelia, once so confident and sure of herself, now looked tired and worn. She had never been one to admit defeat, but the years had humbled her. She had made a mistake that had cost her everything, her family, her reputation, and the life she had once taken for granted. Charles, too, was changing. He had always been able to charm his way out of situations, but he couldn't charm his way out of this one. He no longer had the luxury of being supported by Adam's wealth or status. The world he had once taken for granted was slipping away, and he was left to face the consequences of his actions. There were no more people to blame, no more scapegoats. One day, Amelia sat alone in their small, dimly lit living room, the weight of her choices finally settling over her like a heavy blanket. She thought back to the day Adam had walked away, his words echoing in her mind. "This is the life you chose, Amelia. You built it on lies, and now you're living with the consequences." It was a bitter truth, one she could no longer deny. She had destroyed everything, her family, her future, and the trust she had once had with Adam. And there was no going back. Adam, on the other hand, had found peace. He had closed the door on his past and walked into a future filled with love and honesty. He knew that life would bring new challenges, but for the first time, he was ready for them. The scars from his past no longer defined him. They had shaped him, yes, but they had also made him stronger. The closure Adam had sought for so long had come in ways he never expected. He didn't need the apology, the forgiveness, or the reconciliation. He had found peace within himself, and that was all that mattered. As the days passed, Adam knew that he had done everything he could to heal. And now it was time to live, to love, to move forward. And that was the real victory,